Greetings, YouTube, and welcome to my first ever movie review. I am so honored that several members of the Marvel Contest of Champions community requested for me to do one, which I've never done a movie review before, but I teach digital storytelling at the college level at Oklahoma State University, and so I would like to think I know a thing or two about storytelling. Also, if Marvel Contest of Champions suddenly Thanos style disappears, or more realistically, the federal government cracks down on loot box games, and I have to take my channel in a different direction, I think movie reviews would be something that I would love to do. I know a lot of great YouTubers out there do that, but despite the fact that I still love to review the occasional Oreo and pizza product, that would be something that would benefit me greatly. I also, for this review, am wearing my Infinity War shirt. So, not sure why I thought I would bring that up, but I just want you to know I am psyched up for this. I have a huge note packet in front of me to cover of pros, cons, and a few scenes, two in particular, that I would improve if I had the ability to help rewrite this script. So, spoilers ahead. There's going to be the word spoilers in the title. I wanted to make sure to wait a week plus to put this up, just so that people didn't accidentally click on it and didn't read it and had enough time to actually consume the movie, even though I realize there are several people who still haven't had time to do that. So I want to start off with the pros, right? Because if someone, and a lot of people have asked me, is this worth my money? Not only do I think that Endgame is worth your money, I think it is the best value, hands down, for your dollar ever for a movie ticket. And that's saying something, because those IMAX 3D tickets are not cheap. This movie, not just because of the runtime, but also because of the heart, because of the detail, because of the A-list actors in it, the music, the drama, everything is exactly what a summer blockbuster should be. This is what making movies is all about. And even though the Oscars probably still won't give it a nomination for Film of the Year, the box office, and dare I say the most important thing, the bank account of everybody involved, leaves no mystery involved regarding its place all time, with $1.2 billion grossed just on the opening weekend. So I wanted to start talking about what I loved about the movie first. So again, spoilers, if you haven't seen it, click away. Come back to the video once you've watched it, but I have warned you, spoilers ahead. I was stunned in the best possible way about overall how this movie seamlessly blended so many heroes together. The side quests where they partner up heroes, kind of like Infinity War, was brilliant. And I just love seeing the interaction, and when it's 3 hours, you get to slow down the pacing. This movie had some time to let you breathe and catch up. Infinity War was just like a couple hours straight of madness, of things happening constantly, and the pacing was ferocious, and it was impressive, but it was also exhausting. And this movie does what I think is a better job of handling the pacing of the action mixed with some downtime to just unwind. I also think, I know this is going to be controversial for some people, I was not a big fan of Captain Marvel, particularly the third act of the movie, and I'll go into that with some of my cons of this movie. But in general, Captain Marvel, I was worried, was going to steal too many scenes from the OG Avengers, which really is what this movie's about. And so the writers did a good job of just randomly taking Captain Marvel away for a large chunk of the movie to do her thing in other planets, galaxies, dimensions, whatever. And I appreciated that, even though I was confused as to why they wouldn't have logistically wanted her on the team more. I thought that this movie did an exceptional job, maybe better than any Marvel movie ever, of balancing humor with heart. There was so much emotion tied to this movie. And speaking of which, some people I've seen have complained about this, but when you have a movie that spans a couple of decades worth of writing and character development and build up for this, fan service is a must. And there were so many amazing things that they did, from you're thinking that Captain America is going to have another one of those incredible beatdown scenes in the elevator, and then he just whispers "Hail Hydra," which my theater just cheered and laughed and loved that moment so much. The humor moment that killed it was the running joke of America's ass. That was brilliant and just hilarious. It was a little curious that Captain America suddenly could cuss and not care. I guess that happens when you lose half the people on the planet, but that was a little bit strange for me. I also think that if this was the end of the MCU, if they said this is the last movie, this is the series finale, if you will, I think I'd be okay with it. Like, I'm curious to see where they go from here, but it felt like it kind of ended. And I like that. I like that it just felt like it had the proper final conclusion for so many characters that started this thing from scratch. I also just want to say that there has been some discussion on several channels about Thor and Thor Lebowski, Fat Thor, whatever you call him. I loved him. I thought that he represented what I love about my favorite superhero movie of all time, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2. If you haven't seen that movie or it's been a while, it's easy to forget or maybe not think about how much Peter Parker in that movie loses. He loses his apartment because he can't pay rent. He loses the love of his life who gets engaged to somebody else. He loses the ability to really function as a human being, despite the fact that he has these incredible superpowers and is very popular as Spider-Man. That's what I identify with as a 31-year-old white male in middle America. I identify with loss, I identify with pain, and I identify with struggle. I also like to see characters that don't have to look like Maxim models to be superheroes. I have a 4-inch vertical. In some sports, I'm probably about as athletic as a stale graham cracker. I can't identify with superheroes that are perfect, sculpted athletes. I can admire them, but I can't relate to them. Fat Thor, as somebody who has struggled with PTSD and depression, I thought, I've been there. I haven't maybe gained, 80 pounds, knock on wood, and I haven't suddenly become an alcoholic, but I liked that he was relatable. I like that everything that he has been through, from the loss of having such an amazing girlfriend, to his parents, to just the weight of failing by not going for the head of Thanos, got to him. And unlike the predictability of, say, him just suddenly snapping his fingers, or maybe grabbing the hammer and transforming back into the perfect looking model, he had to accept the fact that this was now him, and he kind of, I think, gained acceptance of that by the end of the movie. Now, they might transform him right back for Guardians or as Guardians of the Galaxy 3, but until then, I very much appreciate that. So those are the pros, and I very, very much am thankful for that. But I did write down a decent amount of cons that I think held this movie back from me giving it like an A+ rating. I still am going to give it a very high rating in my grade book, but there are just some things that bothered me. The beginning of this movie is the worst part of this movie, because the last scene that we see in Infinity War is Nick Fury and the pager. The world has no idea who Captain Marvel is. The Avengers have no idea who Captain Marvel is. And I kept thinking and wondering, what are these moments going to be when Captain Marvel suddenly comes to Earth and the Avengers have to kind of go through the same process? And one of the things I actually liked about Captain Marvel, the movie, where Nick Fury is trying to decide if she's good or bad, and she's trying to prove that she's good, but he's not buying it. Like, that was hilarious and really smart writing. We lost all of that. We have Tony and Nebula floating out in space, and then suddenly she appears like she's God, and there's no explanation of how she knows that they're there. And even if you want to say, well, she just is all-knowledging and all-powerful, which I think is a terrible thing to say, because that's how the comic books portray her or something. When she comes back to Earth and is literally carrying the ship, there has to be some audible shock reaction from the Avengers when they come out to meet them. But there's nothing. It's like they're just so conditioned to not even think about it. They embrace Tony, but she's just kind of there. And I still don't understand, is it implying that they've met her before and we just didn't get to see it? Or is it basically implying that they're not impressed or shocked at all by it? Either way, that's terrible writing and a terrible way to start out the movie. And I thought they missed several opportunities to bridge the end of Infinity War with the beginning of Endgame by just having that transition. It was so confusing, and it really, really bothered me. Thanos is also a villain that I really identify with, in the sense that it's a classic hero. Even though he's a villain, he's the hero of his own story. If someone came up to you and said, look, you've got two choices. If you do nothing, your planet is going to cease to exist in 100 years. The overpopulation is going to wipe it out, and no one's going to live. Or you could wipe out at random, instantly, half of the planet, and it would last, I don't know, 5,000 years. You're not telling me that someone might think, oh, I might do that. I get it. It was relatable, not in a I want him to commit genocide sense, but in a if you want some people to succeed versus no one to succeed and live on, that is, in a really twisted way, kind of a noble endeavor. Thanos, in this movie, he's not really in it much, which I'm okay with because the first one, Infinity War, really was the Thanos movie. But when he makes that speech about now wanting to wipe out all humanity and just start over, I felt like that was turning this complex, fantastic, maybe the best villain in MCU history, into more of a cookie cutter, like, average villain. And I just didn't understand that. I also didn't understand how he was so freaking powerful without the Infinity Gauntlet on him half the time. Like, how could he, by himself, just destroy so many, or really be close to killing the best of the best with the Avengers? I thought, even though I know it built up drama and they needed to do that from a cinema perspective, it just wasn't, I didn't buy it. I was like, wait, how is he suddenly so powerful? Also, he snapped his fingers twice, and the first time, nothing happened to him, right? He was just content in this farm at the end of Infinity War. Whereas when Tony snapped it and Hulk snapped it, instantly they almost died. How did Thanos only have that happen to him the second time when he went to destroy the Infinity Stones? How come he was, basically his health was exempt from the first snap? That didn't make any sense to me. Maybe somebody in the comments can let me know. Also, the moment, which was a really cool sequence where Ant-Man is thinking we did it, and then suddenly that entire, I guess it was the Avengers building, their hideout, whatever, got bombed by rockets and everybody went all the way down to the bottom. I was expecting broken limbs. I was expecting either deaths or near deaths. No one got significantly hurt. These are human beings. Ant-Man's still a human being. Hawkeye/Ronin's still a human being. And there was no, like, significant injury from those explosions that sent them, feet and feet underground with thousands of pounds of things falling on them? Are you kidding me? That's the second most unbelievable scene that I'm going to get to in that third act, if you will. I also don't really like that Falcon is the new Cap. I think it was to sell tickets more than it was realistic. This is a human being that has no superpowers. He's got, like, 5 years of physical prime left, whereas Bucky, somebody that he couldn't kill and really was the whole draw of Civil War, being something that also kind of transformed him as a human being. You're trying to tell me that in that entire span of time, he's not going to give it to the guy who's got a super soldier-like arm and also maybe just the genes of a super soldier? I didn't buy that at all, and I didn't like that. And then on top of that, Captain Marvel, I just feel like she's still so powerful, she's boring. She was relatable in the sense that she was a good fighter but had some weaknesses. And then I just really hated the last act of Captain Marvel because once she gets that chip out of her neck, suddenly she becomes this all too powerful, like Goku Super Saiyan 5 instantly, just destroys everything and kind of makes there be no stakes. We don't even know who her family is. Like, if she had died, who would have mourned her besides her best friend? And so when Captain Marvel just randomly shows up at the end, kind of unannounced, I don't remember a single scene where they called her and needed her. She destroys the ship, and yes, Thanos grabs the Power Stone and hits her with it. But at the same time, like, I was bored with it. I thought that it was not compelling at all. The stakes weren't there, and I really don't like what they've done with the inclusion of her. I also think after 5 years of half the planet being gone, there's still millions and millions of people there. The Mets would be playing, right? Like, things would return to normal. And part of the overall frustration with this movie for me in terms of the 5-year time gap is kind of like Tony and Pepper and their daughter. People would move on. There would be new relationships. There would be new players on sports teams. I think it's more fascinating to have, like, life go back to normal and people to finally accept that it's just now humanity for what it is, and then you return everybody, and suddenly it's like, oh, hey, wife, I have a new wife. How is this going to work? How is Peter's school going to work? Is it going to be a combination of people who were, like, in the 8th or 7th grade and are now seniors with people who were in their senior year when they, left? There are so many plot holes with that, and I don't know how they're going to do that in Far From Home, but if they botch it and they don't think about it, I think that's going to really frustrate me. And then my most frustrating part, speaking of frustration, when it comes to just not being believable, when Pepper Potts put on the Iron Man suit, was flying around at the end, and everybody was getting like at least nicked up, and then she was just flying around, and I don't think she ever got touched. I didn't buy that at all. I have not seen her in an Iron Man suit since Iron Man 3, and that third act is the worst third act in the whole MCU. And so I was just like, I was rolling my eyes at that. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, this person, she should probably be dead. Like, she shouldn't be on the battlefield, and instead she's going to be perfectly untouched, and Tony is going to be the one to take the fall. That really frustrated me. And I know frustration is probably the word of the day. Don't take a shot every time I say frustration that you're going to be in a coma. There are two scenes that I want to end this on because my goal was to keep this under 20 minutes. We're already at 16 minutes. Thank you for everybody who's watched it still at this point. There are two scenes that I think are instrumental to the plot but could have been improved. And I'm going to give you an example. I tell my students all the time, the gold coin method of storytelling is what I teach in my classes. And it's you actually save things to reveal to the audience that goes along. Maybe it's a plot twist. Maybe it's a special music score, natural sound, things to reward the viewer for staying with you. They're called gold coins. It's a gold coin method of storytelling. And two of the most emotional scenes were good, but they could have been better in the movie. So Tony Stark gets off the plane when he's near death with Nebula and when Captain Marvel saved him, and he looks at Captain America and says, "We lost the kid." That clearly affected him the most. And then he looks at that picture of him and him and Peter. He's Tony, and he decides, "I got to do this. I got to go back in time to save Peter." Peter, of course, is somebody who has lost his uncle. He never knew his parents. He didn't really have a father figure. Tony Stark is his father figure, and Tony Stark loves him like a son. I know they had a hug on the battlefield, and there probably wasn't much time before they had to get back and fight. But what if Tony had looked Peter in the eye after that hug, and he had said, "It's so great to see you, son." And then there's a tight shot of Peter's face, and he just goes, "Son?" And then Tony flies off. When Tony dies, and Peter finally has another father in his life, but he has to say goodbye to him, not only does that make the emotion even greater, but it makes the stakes of the death that much more powerful. And I wish they had included that dialogue instead of just the hug. The second clip, the most emotional I got, really in the movie, was when Captain America was on the other side of the wall of Peggy Carter, and he didn't do anything. He walked away for the good of the mission, even though the love of his life, who he hadn't been able to speak to in decades, was a wall away from him. That was such a powerful scene. So when they get to dance at the end, the dance is powerful, but it's not the powerful moment that I was waiting for. The moment that we deserve to see as fans was when the doorbell rings and she's mourning having to lose love of her life, and then he's standing in the doorway, maybe with some flowers in hand, and he just looks at her and says, "I think I have a date," or something like that. And then she drops everything, embraces him. Maybe they kiss, maybe they just embrace. And that moment is the gold coin that we were waiting for. That moment was the emotional moment. Yes, there are other moments you can talk about with Captain America in that final scene, like him confronting maybe Red Skull with the Soul Stone. Would have loved to see that. But in general, those two moments, Tony calling Peter his son, and then Peter in turn losing another dad, another father figure in his life, missed opportunity. And then having Captain America actually have that moment where Peggy Carter sees him and they embrace instead of just skipping to the slow dance. I would have loved to really see both those, and I would have written those in. It would have added 2 minutes of runtime and made a world of difference to the emotional weight of the last act of the movie. But as a whole, what am I going to grade this on? Well, again, it's an A+ in terms of the value for your dollar. Anyone who's watching this, if you somehow watch spoilers, I don't know what possessed you to do that, but it's definitely worth every penny. Emotion-wise, I think it's an A. I heard so many people crying around me, and I thought, if you're moved to tears, that's an A for emotion. But the plot, I'm somewhere between a B+ and an A-. I'm going to go ahead and be generous and say a 90, say an A-. But there are several things that I listed and some I didn't have time to list that I just think held it back from being like a super amazing, tight-writ script. But at the same time, the written script had enough that I enjoyed it. I also love Back to the Future, so time travel kind of gets me excited to see a movie. So we're at 20 minutes. I promised myself this is when I would cut it off. I could go on for another hour, but Lord knows that would be way too wordy. Thank you so much to everybody who encouraged me to do my first ever movie review on my channel. Hopefully it's not the last one I do. If you did enjoy it, I would appreciate the feedback in the comments, so that would give me an idea that it really was worth your time. It is more along the lines of what I do every day professionally. I've only been playing Marvel Contest of Champions for a couple of years, but I have been teaching storytelling, especially digital storytelling, for about a third of my life. So there you have it, YouTube. Thanks for watching. If you're the first person to see this, or if this is the first video, I should say, that you've seen of mine and you liked it, hit that subscribe button. If you liked the review, hit that like button. I don't say that very much, but this is kind of me being vulnerable, trying a new kind of video on my channel that I never thought I'd do. So what can I say? I'm going to end that video like I guess a lot of YouTubers do. Either way, thanks for watching, YouTube. You all are great. Let me know what your thoughts are below. Agree, disagree. As always, I appreciate your feedback. And otherwise, have a fantastic Sunday.